Hello, all you fine feathered ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is League on Lock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for the first edition of Power Rankings in the summer split. It's about that time.
Hey, doesn't matter what you thought about week one. It was here and it came
It
in.
happened.
It happened barging through the doors, the ups, the downs of it, and you better believe there's a bit of both, of course, in the LCS. Time to break it all down to power rank.
And here's, I want to preface this, and this is going to be an ongoing thing, but most apparent in this week, it's so hard to do these power rankings, especially with the format changes, with spring carrying over into summer, having these same records. It's a fine balance. You take the momentum and power levels that you saw from spring. Do you do a full restart, fully fresh start in summer and just go purely based off week one? But you can't really do that because they have the spring records.
Hard enough to normally do the power rankings, come up, make the opinion, stand your ground and argue for it type of thing. Even harder when you're trying to establish, well, what exactly are we grading them on, right? As far as their performances, the past, how much of it, everything else. This split is going to be wonky in that regard and how we view it. But I think for both of us, it has to be just off of this first week's performance and what that sets you up for in the next coming weeks of the summer split.
Yeah, I think what we settled on is you're still taking some from spring, but you're much more heavily weighing the action in summer. And right now we just got 1 week to go off of. So yeah, 3 games are going to have a pretty big impact as we start with 10-6. And at the very bottom, I was hoping for a start to get some momentum for the CLG boys, but didn't give us much to get them out of the bottom.
Absolutely nothing to get out of the bottom for CLG. And in fact, even worse for them is you had the Golden Guardians just ahead of them, putting together performances that at least one performance, and let alone the majority of their play.
One player performance, at the very least.
Absolutely out of the basement for the Golden Guardians, and in their place is CLG and how things worked out. Expectations, hopes for everybody, what we had seen end towards the spring split, the ending of it. A lot of people thought that, having them aside break, having everybody together now, gonna be able to get better, gonna be able to climb up in the summer split. Week one was anything but climbing up the standings.
And I'm going to call it an uncharacteristically bad bot lane performance, because even though Wild Turtle's maybe not the form that he was at his peak and hasn't been for a few splits now, he's not this bad. Wild Turtle's much better than he showed in week one. Fully expect him and Smoothie to be performing better on the weeks to come. But week one was rough for them. And Golden Guardians, as you mentioned, they had the great win against Cloud9, and they actually showed, some competitiveness in the other matches as well. So based on what you saw in spring, you're happy with week one out of the Guardians.
Right, and I don't want to turn this around and say that, oh my God, they are fantastic. Everything is so perfect. The grass is greener type of situation with the Golden Guardians. You need to still keep yourself in check and realize when you do see some of these mistakes and the losses that did happen this weekend, that this is still a work in progress, that this is still going to be slow progress. And I don't know how much progress is it going to be right? How far you're going to be able to go in this regard up the standings. But at the very least, the trajectory is upwards. And you can't say that all the time about the Golden Guardians. And that is certainly, it's been, definitely bolstered by the big, strong performance of a Blaze Olive in the win against Cloud9.
It's the color is green for the Guardians right now, as opposed to red, which has been red alert, red alarm down for a while. So a positive stepping stone for the first week. EG, we threw it at number 8. And listen, you can say, this team could have gone 3-0. They should be way higher up. The fact that they lost the games against TSM and Dignitas, where they had massive leads, and the fact that they made the decision to lose the game against FlyQuest, having these winnable games and losing them in the fashion that they did is even more reason for me to put them at 8.
And one of my big problems and issues with these disappointments for the Evil Genius players is, again, you see the tilt, you see, the anger, the frustration on their faces, and this doesn't seem, at least from the outside looking in, like a group that is taking that frustration and anger and saying, you know what, let's get better together. We're going to rebound. We're going to get this. This seems a lot like man, my teammate is really screwing me up or really making, like, that's the type of bad tilt and toxicity that you can't have. And that's from the outside looking in, the reactions that we're seeing after some of these mistakes. And then even when you're looking for some ray of hope, sunshine in the changes that happen and looking in summer, I think Danny has certainly been a good level performer at the very least so far, replacing in Deftly. But the problem was Deftly was towards the top end of the LCS ADC's last split statistically. Need to get at least that level of production, if not better. And then we're still dealing with the bad, decision and choices that are coming through from Evil Geniuses, even when they're in positions of power in games.
A team like EG, and it's only week 1, so it's a little early to say this, but you've even heard guys like Jat talking about it in interviews. When you come into Summer Split, usually it's a full reset. Your record is okay. We can start 3-0. You have a great start. It's exciting. Now all of a sudden you come into Summer and it just feels like week 9 of a never-ending split. EG goes 3-0, and now they're 10-11. You're like, I already feel like I'm in the dog days, the mid-season slump, and it's week 1.
Yeah, and importantly, when you're saying that, yes, this is week 1 of the summer split, you have some time and refresh, all these type of things that need to be allowed. But at the same time, the decision making, the problems, the inting, everything else that's come through with Evil Genius that we see in these losses, those are the same things that we saw in the losses in the spring split. These are still the same equations as far as the pop off to, throwing it away that we had when we talked about players like Svenskar and Jizuke, Ignar even, in our power ranking, in our player position rankings. And then on top of that, this weekend, you had a very poor performance from Impact in the top lane. And that is spelling absolute doom for Evil Geniuses in summer.
But luckily, they got 8 more weeks, so there's plenty of time to be bouncing back. FlyQuest is in at number 7. They had 2-1 record, not bad. Now, again, one of those wins is against CLG, and one of them was that Nexus defense against Evil Geniuses. So a little bit deceiving, the 2-1 start, but overall, this is closer to what we were expecting out of FlyQuest and Licorice. I mean, Gwen can make anybody look like they're in peak form, but Licorice definitely looked better in week 1 than he did most of spring.
Absolutely. The now veteran on this roster for FlyQuest and the way it is in the LCS, he absolutely has to be relied upon and counted upon to be able to step up and deliver these type of performances that he did. Gwen or not needs to be the level of things for FlyQuest, and I think that is at least where we're trending so far in summer. And then when you talk about the rest of FlyQuest, for me, as you said, that this is more or less what we wanted to see, the progression of them. I think that's the first thing that I can think of from this first week of summer split, is seeing how well they've progressed and a little bit of improvements over the spring split individually in almost every single role for FlyQuest.
8-13, right where you want to be for that final playoff spot over in the hyper-competitive LCS. Last one in the bottom half of the standings, it's Team Liquid, who went 1-2, the only win against CLG. Not a very impressive week 1, but the bigger issue is off the rift with Team Liquid, because this Alfari drama is now blowing up everywhere. He's tweeting about it, about being benched, and how Jat said on Travis's interview that it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision to bench him, something they'd been thinking about. But then Jenkins in his post-game interview is saying he was surprised, shocked that he was even getting the start. So there's a little bit of disconnect. Whatever's going on behind the scenes, it doesn't look good.
Hey man, we got Rumble on the Rift. We got Rumble lighting fires at the Alienware training facility for Team Liquid, because this is not good. I know, again, outsiders looking in type of situation, but everything that is coming through is not painting the best level of professionalism.
It's week 1.
And this is, oh my God, what a mess and fiesta this is going on. And this is so unfortunate for a lot of reasons, mainly because Jenkins is a player that does deserve this type of step up, this type of opportunity, sure. But nobody would be agreeing that it comes at the cost of what Alfari is producing.
No other LCS top laner was to go over Alfari. LCS starting. Ugh.
It is absolutely bonkers the way this is playing out. The reasons, excuses, if we want to go that far, that we're getting for this type of change and move. The reaction, not only from the community, from Alfari himself with the tweets coming through, you better believe it is not happy-go-lucky times over at Team Liquid. And even outside of just looking at the whole Alfari issue, not exactly super convinced. Not sixth place in the power rankings convinced. But oh boy, it is not the way that Team Liquid needed to bounce out of the gates for summer.
If Alfari ends up getting moved in the middle of the season in summer, there must have been something drastic, insane that happened. But you heard Jat again say, nothing crazy's happened. If nothing crazy happened, why is the dude benched?
Nothing's crazy happened. Why is statistically the most dominant, best player in the LCS, let alone last split, maybe ever in the LCS, is sitting on the bench for over $1 million of Steve's money? I am not understanding this whatsoever.
Well, it's because Team Liquid invested a lot in Jenkins, okay? They need to reap the rewards.
More than $1 million, I forgot.
They got Alfari for free, So it's a rough start for Team Liquid. Again, 8 more weeks, but if this is how you're starting week 1, I don't know what to tell you, Steve and the boys. Into the top 5 now, and with Team Liquid being out of there, Cloud9 wins the head-to-head against them. Cloud9 at 5, the MSI reps from the LCS. Some people might say that's dramatic for the first week, but again, we're heavily outweighing summer performances now compared to spring, and in the 2 losses, Cloud9 looked like doo-doo.
If you've got a problem with Cloud9 at number 5 in this power ranking, maybe I'll allow the nice answer first, is that you're expecting some weight to carry over from the spring split. The record that is there, being the MSI representative. And sure, I can understand that perspective. That's not what's going on here. Number 2, you didn't watch the games because Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves, those losses absolutely is not even of a team that would be you'd want to put in number 5 in the power rankings, that level of performance that you saw come all across the board. Even wanting to give credit to those 2 teams and what they did to make sure they were securing the win. Not the weekend for Cloud9. There are going to be some positives to talk about that we did see this past weekend and that we expect to continue into the weekends up following. But absolutely, needing an answer and understanding, yes, the short turnaround for MSI, this is still not how you wanted to show yourself to your fans and the rest of the LCS.
And King was the furthest thing from a problem for Cloud9 in this first week, but 1 week in now, 2/5 of the first team All-Pro from spring is benched and not even starting in the LCS. Who's next? Perks? Core JJ?
My God, we're going to start dropping like flies the stars from the LCS. It's just because we got so much of that NA talent in the pipeline, man. Don't you understand?
That's what it is.
You got to replace these absolute megastars that are still producing.
It's crazy, man.
It is still crazy. You said King was certainly far from the issue. I think, not exactly the solution either for Cloud9 in a lot of these games and what was happening. But yes, I think putting any type of blame or any more responsibility in that regard towards him is unfair. And then the positive I really want to talk about that we had been hyping up and excited about from his performances at MSI is the continued growth and excellency that we're getting to see from Fudge in the top lane, because that was certainly something evident throughout the entirety of this weekend, even in the low points for Cloud9.
Alfari out. It's time for the Fudge factor to take over. Things only getting easier for him in the LCS. Number 4 is Immortals, who had the nice 3-0. They looked clean in most of their games. And again, because we are bringing a bit of spring in, it's why they're at number 4 and not higher. And the other reason is, of course, 2 of the wins were against Golden Guardians and CLG. So you got to see them against some better teams. They had the impressive one against 100 Thieves, no question. You could talk about the draft that 100 Thieves had in that match, but Immortals fair and square win that game. Xerxes, by the way, 40 KDA in those first 3 games.
And I think that's something that needs to be given credit to with the Immortals, is that what they did over the course of the MSI break, from everything we're hearing, it was boot camp central with Guillermo, the coach. It was all about what they needed to get done, how they needed to improve as a 5-man squad. And I think that, let alone from how they've improved, absolutely the camaraderie in this squad, that team atmosphere, you can certainly see that in a lot of the post-game celebration and what's happening there. But even just the statistics, the numbers that are coming through from each player on this team, I don't know, no one cares about, your fantasy team, but I looked in our sleeper fantasy LCS pool, and I saw that the top statistical players, the top point getters, all of them, Immortals players, every single role. That's what it was this weekend. That's the level of dominance that we saw from this Immortals roster. exciting stuff from this 3-0, and I only hope that this is not what we saw at the start of the spring split, where it was Immortals jumping out of the gate with impressive performances and then fizzling out.
Yeah, I hope we continue to talk about them competing at this level against some of the better teams in the LCS. 3-2, you have Dignitas and 100 Thieves. They had that head-to-head that 100 Thieves did come away with, and the 2 wins that 100 Thieves did have, and one of the few teams that actually made some roster changes coming into this year, so you feel like just Abadage coming in, you get a little bit of leeway, ease them in with the 3 Karma games. But both of these squads, you gave enough in that first week, especially with Cloud9 and Team Liquid faltering so heavily to keep them in that upper echelon.
And with Dignitas, eventually I want to, get an answer to the question about, where we see a lot of these wins coming from. It's a lot of the time coming from behind, not having an early advantage, finding a way back in, capitalizing on a mistake, taking all these type of opportunities that you can. And yeah, it's worked out, but eventually I want to know what happens when it doesn't. How are you able to find other avenues for the success, or is it just this one, waiting? Because absolutely that is what we have seen, and we have seen capitalized upon by Dignitas and the rest of this roster. Want to see some other avenues of success come through for them. 100 Thieves, as we talked about, easing in Abadage, the type of compositions that they had been playing, makes sense. The 3 Karma to some degree, but you've seen the glimpses of what his top end, not even his top end, but the skill that Abadage can bring and what he is as a player. Absolutely excited to see it expanded upon for 100 Thieves in this next week.
And what we also learned is that you can still play around FBI if you're 100 Thieves. He had the highest CSD at 15 and almost 40% of his team's damage, 38. I know when you play Kog'Maw, that stuff like that's going to happen, but FBI is still looking like one of, if not the premier bot laner in the LCS so far. Then we get to number 1 after week 1, and it is Team Solo Mid with the 3-0. FTX brand in full swing, and they had... Okay, the Team Liquid game, Team Liquid almost got back into that game. They had the base defense ace that almost got them back, and it was some slow games, a rough early game against EG, but overall, you can still feel pretty confident about the 3-0 for TSM to put them at number 1.
At the very least, after week 1, you have to be confident that, even as things will more or less level out, from what you've seen from TSM over the course of the spring split, to jump out the way they did here in summer, the progression that you hope they continue to make, I don't see them falling outside of the top 5 is a very conservative thing to say in North America, at the very least, from what we've gotten from them. But if they continue this type of trajectory, this type of hype, man, I'm going to be stupid, and it's going to turn me into a believer again. It's going to do it. I'm a fool, man. It's every year. It's around this time. They start turning around. I'm going to see a picture of Bjergsen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It's the FTX announcement, the picture of Bjergsen in a dress shirt sitting there in front of the guys looking all cool. Mark was like, okay, I'm back. I'm all in.
200 million? I don't care. I'm in on FTX. Here we go.
Setting up early for the TSM disappointment. Can't wait for them to get into Worlds and then just, completely, yep, that's the big tank. But for now, they're sitting pretty in that number 1 spot. The rest of the week, we got LCK kicking off with T1, as we mentioned. The LEC gets going on Friday, which means this upcoming weekend, we're back to full slates of games.
LPL is already ripping and roaring in the early mornings.
Yep.
We got it going. League of Legends, we're back, baby. No more MSI break.
Summer split, buckle up. This is when stuff gets crazy the second half of the year. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you on that flippity flip.